Can you believe that camps either have a strong community psychological safety base or they have absolutely almost none at all?
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Running camp comes with enough moving parts. UltraCamp keeps registration, payments, and communication in one place so you can spend less time juggling systems and more time building an incredible camp experience. Learn more at ultracampmanagement.com/camphacker.
Hello, Camp Mavericks, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast, brought to you by UltraCamp and the Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic. My name is Chris Hudson, and I am a thought partner and staff trainer for camps and other youth development organizations to make sure that those places are open to everyone, staff, family, and children, regardless of how they identify.
And I'm Travis Allison. I'm a summer camp consultant specializing in helping camps to reclaim their staff time, build resilience, and reignite their purpose.
I am Amanda Palmer, happy to be back on the podcast, and I am a researcher and doctoral candidate at the University of Idaho, and I'm a consultant who helps camps to define those core staff practices that help them align their mission-based values with the amazing outcomes that they are promising the parents of their campers.
And I am Kendra Perkins. I am a co-founder of Innovative Camp Company. We are a consultant company for camps, and our mission is your mission. Come alongside to support you in the amazing, wonderful work that you do in youth serving spaces.
Amanda, welcome back. We're grateful to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
And Kendra, welcome to CampHacker for the first time. I want to take just a second
Yay!
and hear a bit about your camp story. How did you get started at camp?
How did I get started in camp? Thanks, Travis, and thanks for having me. Excited to be here with y'all. Started at camp as an 8-year-old, and I was a kid who was super shy, didn't have any interest in talking to anyone outside of my family. Went to camp, and it was the first place that I was given the opportunity to understand that I had a voice, I had things to say, and had amazing adults create that space for me to dive into that. So I knew camp was it for me, changed everything for me as a person. Became the space I wanted to be in, have a background in education, but traded a classroom for my camp classroom and never looked back. So been in the industry for about 25 years, been camp directing spaces, primarily supporting marginalized populations. So lots of special needs, special spaces that camp serves beautifully. So that's where I started.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you for being here. We're grateful to you.
Thanks so much.
So today we're talking about, so Chris talked about, this is brought to you by UltraCamp and the Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic. This is for the first time we have enough data to pull together the initial learnings from the diagnostics that camps are filling out this year. And big kudos to the camps that have filled this out more than once. Like, I know camps that have filled this out, saw some things that they wanted to change, and it came back 3 months later, and it was great to see their scores change. This is free, so you can do this as much as you want, but I would encourage you to do it over and over again because you can see where some changes are. And the diagnostic is based on some of my theories, based on all of my experience in this, because we've talked a lot this year about helping camp directors find space and time to deal with big picture problems and be creative, and honestly just have time to sit down with a kid who needs you to sit down with them. Mm-hmm. And that's the purpose of it. And so we've started to learn some things from it, and I did a little report that I'm going to announce when we put this episode out, or I'm going to put out when this episode goes out, but I shared it with these folks on it. And some fascinating stuff that we're going to try to generalize to the industry. Amanda's a statistician, and so I know she already doesn't like my questions that much, but we have the beginnings of things to learn about, and we're gonna go from there. So I think for me, there's a couple of pieces that really stood out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw to you folks to start just something that you glean from it before I dig into the 5 big lessons and then the follow-up questions. So is there something that you saw in reading this through that made you I don't know, surprised, excited,
Yes.
mad? Chris,
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm chomping at the bit to talk about this. Okay.
Nice.
Chomping at the bit. The psychological safety question. And for people who aren't looking at it at this moment, the question is something along the lines that, like, does your staff feel comfortable speaking up, speaking out? There are two camps here, no pun intended. Camps that are amazing at it and report so, then camps who basically aren't doing it. This is like in Travis's opening question. I read that 3 times. I'm trying to understand, and I want to hear from people in this group, in this room. I'm trying to understand how that comes to be. And then I was thinking, is it just a perception problem? Are people being hard on themselves and their meager efforts or beginner efforts, they're seeing it as like, you know, they're not giving themselves enough credit? I was like, are people giving themselves too much credit? How is it that there is no middle ground there? Like, people are saying, well, there's no works in progress. It's either we're successful at it or we don't even bother to attempt it. As a staff trainer myself, I found this to be really interesting. I walk around the country, America and Canada, talking about psychological safety. And so either I'm coming to 2 conclusions based on this limited data set. Either I'm amazing, right? And all those camps we've like said there were 8 to 10, those were camps I was at, or I'm terrible, or it's just a drop in the bucket because too many camps feel like they're not there. I want to start here. How did that hit everybody else? Because I was flabbergasted.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. And no, Travis, I don't hate your questions, but I do come from a place of instrument and survey design. And so I have lots of thoughts that we can not bring up right now. But I wonder, I think, Chris, what you said about camp directors being hard on themselves, I think that could be part of it. I do want to make sure it's clear when we're talking about this one, because that, like, as you said, or as Travis described it, it's like a bimodal distribution, that you've got a lot of people saying we're doing terrible, a lot of people saying we're doing great, and a small number in the middle, which was unusual for the questions. But it does say in there 90% or more of our staff are feeling safe. And so are feeling safe to bring up a mistake they made or an issue they're worried about or something like that. And so maybe saying just about every single person feels safe is more of the issue there. And so I'm often coming from like a question structure perspective. So
you think Travis's questions suck?
I didn't say that.
Drama on the podcast today, everyone. No, I hear you, though. That's beginning to make some sense.
Well, I mean, and it could be that there's a huge problem. Absolutely. I'm not saying there's like definitely not a problem, but I wonder about being confident enough to say 9 out of 10 of my staff will absolutely come admit their mistakes. And that, I imagine, Travis, you worded it that way because that's the goal. I mean, these are all goal statements that you are saying are valuable. Like, we want to be saying these things. Anyway, that's my initial thought about it, is wondering about the interpretation. But as Chris said, like, are we hard on I'm not a camp director, but are camp directors hard on ourselves,
or too easy?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that also. And is it, regardless of where it's coming from with the answer from a camp director, I think what the data is showing is there's a gap. There's a gap either statistically, if we're really doing the work and getting the data and understanding a percentage of our staff who are feeling comfortable, or is it our perception of, well, this is how it felt this summer. To me, as the director, I feel like it's what this report is showing is there's a gap and it's a challenge and it's something that we need to pay attention to and we need to work on.
And I think coming from, so one of my experiences, one of the positive experiences of being a camp director for a long time with the same person who eventually became my spouse, is that I think I was probably quite a good camp director, but Beth has a level of intention and a view on the camp world that just pushed me so hard we can do better. We have to do better. And so eventually we developed this sort of view on camp, which is we need to be intentional about everything as much as we possibly can. Mm-hmm. And that does for us mean that the staff feels comfortable And even if that's stuff that we weren't able to do when we were actually camp directing, I think it's our goal to have that place, that you have the systems in place to make it a spot where camp can say, I made a mess, or, we have, as a staff team, we have this problem and let's all fix it together. And so it's a high number, there's no doubt. But the reason why I chose a high number is that, again, my filter for all this is, how can we make it easier to be a camp director in 2026? And when you have culture down, everything gets easier. And when you have culture in your staff and you have a safe place and you are committed to solving problems together, staff retention is much higher. And staff recruiting is much higher because you have your own staff hearing friends at college talking about what a terrible summer job they had, and your staff member saying, that's weird because this was this amazing experience that we had together. And so, yeah, it's, it's a goal. And I don't even know where specifically, I designed it in summer, so I don't even remember where the number came from, but it was based on some research that I had found. But yeah, so it is one of the interesting things that came out of here. So I want to talk more about details and things that you picked up, but I want to talk about sort of the key insights that I picked out of this. Remind you once again that my goal is to make it easier to be a camp director. My theory on that is that we need to be thoughtful about systems. We need to use every tool available to ourselves to have time and energy to be that kind of camp director. And so there is some specific AI questions and lessons, but for me, AI is a part of the tech stack, part of the tools that you can use to get some more space to be more creative and notice more things. You have, when you're using systems, which talks, sort of the way you set up things plus the tools, when you use that well, that you have less of that blinding fear of what am I missing? And so that's where I'm coming from. So the key insights that come out of this, AI is the industry's biggest blind spot. And that really is that 3/4 of people have a significant gap in using AI to reduce their workload and to come up with systems to make the job easier. Camps know their families, but don't systematize the knowledge. So they learn about their families, but they don't apply that. They don't have a way of saying, this is what families expect of us, and making sure that their counselors know this is what families expect of us, and then have a way of testing those things. And my hope is that as the industry looks through the character map in the next few years, we start to, as an industry, develop systems to measure some of these things better. Number 3, quarterly planning is barely happening because our life as a camp director is really divided. It's almost divided up in thirds more than quarters, but it's like fall, winter chaos. Then there should be points at that at which you say, we have a goal for this time period. And I think you as a camp director should have one big picture goal, something beyond email triage and talking to parents and doing staff interviews, like something above that is big picture for camp, and you should be measured against it. That's one of the things we try to implement when we work with a nonprofit director who's working with a board. Have a board set up a structure to encourage and coach this kind of planning and evaluation. Number 4, psychological safety is a polarizing thing. There's a lot of camps that do great and a lot of camps that don't. At creating this, there's really hardly any camps in the middle. And the third one is really interesting, is that this tech adoption, which in this case the wording was use of AI, the tech adoption is an indicator of how well you're going to do in the rest of these things. So we're looking at different sections within it. But anyway, there's the big lessons. How'd that make you feel?
Can I?
And
No, you first. You first, because
Really?
I know you're already furious at Travis. I just want you to get it out.
Oh, no, I am gonna skip a few of my meta level questions, but Travis, I would love for you to just give us a description of how you're defining resilience
Yeah, that's
for the camp organization, because this is a resilience blueprint. And my experience has a lot to do with the campers. What are they up to? What are they doing? We're measuring them. And what I'm seeing in this data is about the staff, is about the parents, the marketing, the systems. So what does resilience mean in this diagnostic tool?
Specific to this and my bigger project of the resilience blueprint is looking at three areas: financial resilience, operational resilience, and community resilience. So we have the soft skill, emotional part of being a camp director in the community resilience. We have the operational stuff that looks at how we hire, how we as camp leaders use our own time, and then financial resilience, because I'm frankly mad that camps didn't learn from 2020, and the camps are building up a cushion around, like a financial cushion around that, and that if something happened that you had to shut down camp for a week and pay those parents back, most camps couldn't do that, couldn't pay back 1 week of things. And that's incredibly risky way to run an organization that cares for other people's kids. So resilience to me means that you are planning for those eventualities. And fair play, financial resilience in the last 6 years is incredibly difficult. But if we're thoughtful about it, you could get a tiny bit better at all of these things. So that's kind of my method, or the thing I want to instill, is that make small changes. You don't have to get overwhelmed by this. This is why this is organized in sections, and you can just like pick one thing and work on that one thing. Your scores get better. Is that helpful to see that, Amanda?
Okay. No, absolutely. It just left me wondering that a little bit reading the report, like kind of how you were defining it. Now, yeah. Chris, go ahead.
I just have a question, because like what we learned from the report is that the camps that do use AI well, the camps that have use it as a tool, outperform other camps in every category. Yep. What are they using the AI for? And Travis, you and I have talked a lot about this as far as like communication with like parents, but my personal experience, that wasn't a tech problem for us. It was a culture problem that we were able to fix with cultural tools. And so outside of communication, I was like, because clearly this report clearly shows that camps are not using AI to their full potential. What is the full potential? Like, I guess that I'm left wondering that. And I don't know if anyone here can answer that necessarily in the time that we have, but that was my biggest takeaway, is like, I need to take another look at our systems and our processes and see how, what, when can we, And
I think I can answer that, Chris, because I've been working on a lot of that in the last year. But the other thing that I want to talk about is that use of AI is kind of a symptom of being resilient. It's an indicator of being resilient instead of like AI is the answer. But what I think this conclusion that camps use AI are better or score better in all the other indicators, to me, shows that camps that are willing to try new things and get out of we've always done it that way, and really purposely develop their own agency. Like, this thing's intimidating, but I'm going to learn how to use it. I'm going to develop the skills around that. That's the thing that shows me, versus you're good at AI. And I'm happy to answer how you can use AI, but I think it's just an indicator of camps that are willing to re-examine how they run things, because they want to have more energy. I'm sick and tired of leading conference session and looking out at the audience and seeing people that are just exhausted.
I'll jump in. Thanks, Amanda. I think it's a symptom of your main point, Travis, of camp directors are tired and exhausted, and even using a new tool becomes I don't have the capacity to learn a new tool. So even though it could be something that could change a lot of things and improve a big significant chunk of how you work and how your program works and how effective you are, it's almost like just the thought of learning that is too much. And then it's a shutdown, and I just got to keep doing what I know works, because that's where I live right now.
It's like a losing proposition, though. It's like you lose a little bit of ground every year because the world is changing underneath you, as this one snippet of the report shows you. Like, It's a losing strategy. Interesting.
Absolutely. I also was really curious what else is similar about those 31 camps in your report. You scored really well on AI readiness and that pillar of resilience in terms of, like, I know you didn't gather or report on demographic stuff, but if you're aware, Travis, of any patterns, just knowing the camps at all, like if you think about them, it made me wonder, are they higher resourced? Are they higher focused on STEM education? Are they all associated with the university? Like, is there something that sets them apart that would lead to that adoption of AI?
There is, but the answer to those examples is no, no, and no. It's not
Okay.
that. It is across the board. It is dependent on the individual leader's interest in really developing a systemic way of thinking, like, and the drive to constantly improve and change things. It's all across the board. Whoever's on the high end of the culture spectrum in these answers, it's day camps, it's overnight camps, it's all of them. I think comes down to the leader's willingness to get past what Kendra was just talking about. Like, it's just, I get that this thing can help me, and I'm going to bite off the smallest bite I can to start to figure out that stuff and maybe build the muscle of looking for things that I can change and improve, which is why I'm always saying take the smallest bite to get there. So I think that that's just sort of I think it's an individual more than a pattern within the camps. Exclusive for CampHacker listeners, grab UltraCamp's free guide, The Parent Experience Checklist. Practical steps to simplify registration and keep families coming back. Download at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. Parents don't want clunky processes, and you don't want constant phone calls. UltraCamp helps you simplify registration with mobile-friendly forms, offer payment plans that work for your families, reduce calls and emails with automated reminders, and keep parents engaged with built-in communication tools. UltraCamp helps you create smooth, stress-free parent interactions so your team can focus on camp, not customer service. Learn more at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker.
And I know this is bad for podcasting, but I can't stop thinking about it. I should be talking about it, right? You took the 5 takeaways, you talked about them.
Mhm.
And I'm not a camp director anymore, but I still have a lot of influence over my camp. And I'm just trying to figure out, okay, given this, what's next for us to do? Like, how do we use this information to improve operations or culture or finances? Like, I'm sitting here just like trying to put it all together, because honestly, I want to say, like, I find this fascinating. I didn't expect these kinds of results, and they're very telling.
Mhm.
And also, and I'm no statistician, but it seems unambiguous on like 2 or 3 points, like the psychological safety point, the AI point. It just seems unambiguous. And I'm like, well, clearly there should be a to-do list that falls out of these. And I'm still struggling to be like, how do I use this information?
I think, in fairness to people who are statisticians, the questions aren't designed particularly well for this. Like, this is just
God, she beat you down.
This is not a research. This wasn't designed as a research project. This is a self-help tool.
Yeah.
And it just, now we have enough that we can kind of expand those things out. So yeah, like, I don't think the correlation, I think the correlation is there, but I don't think it's incredibly valid from a statistical standpoint, just because of the way the questions are written. But I do think it's there. And I'm happy to talk about next steps with folks. But is there any other stuff in there that was a surprise or an encouraging nugget or something that you saw?
I had one more real strong thought about the psychological safety takeaway. How does this translate from staff safety to camper safety? How much is it talking about the power dynamics between, say, seasonal staff and your leadership team and your camper safety? And so I would be cautious about taking that result and saying camps are either doing great at psychological safety or bad at it, in terms of this was a very specifically staff question saying we're at A- at least on it for our staff, 90%. But how does that translate to your whole camp's culture? I'm not asking you to answer that question. That was just something that really came up for me. What does that say about the rest of the people who are at camp too?
The thing
I
is
know
that
that looked like you had a,
yeah,
Go.
you saw the thought, Travis. You saw. I just in looking at all of it, I'm a big like look at the big picture person and thinking through the results in each section, each pillar. It to me comes down to something that has always been, as a camp director, of source of frustration of feel like traditionally so many camps are dependent on a person. It's your
Yep.
director, it's
Yep.
the heart of your camp, the owner, the whoever it was that, really became that core value of what your camp is and how it works. And instead of putting time and effort into building systems that we can then teach, and then you have multiple levels of support because of the system that's in place, you teach the system, you can't teach a person. And if your whole camp culture and all of your work and the decisions and everything are dependent on a person, there could be a day that my camp used to say, and I would say to my staff, what if I get hit by a bus and I don't show up at camp?
Yep.
I need you to run camp,
It's a massive problem.
whether I'm here or not. And so if we can get into the nitty gritty of we're good at the people, we're good at the relationships, that's what we're all about. But if we can create systems that we then teach our staff, it builds our culture and becomes how we do things, that's how we're going to continue to get a little bit better. Because then we rely on the system, we're in that space, everyone works in the same way and brings their strengths to that system to make it better. But to me, that's, as I'm looking at, each of these pillars and going, well, we're getting there, but we've got some work to do. And those getting comfortable and relying on tools and systems as a camp director, that doesn't change your relationships. It gives you more time and space to dive into the relationships and do them well.
Yeah.
Just flashing back something you said before, camp directors are tired, right? Camp directors are tired. But then I was thinking, like you said, we can break up the year in trimesters, sort of. And 2 of the 3 trimesters are insane, absolutely insane. But then how many industries does like the executive director, like the head of the thing, how many industries you can just have like 3 months of very light work? Why are we so tired? Why aren't we better prepared? This data suggests to me, right, that I don't know, we're overlooking things. And I'm just thinking back to like my own preparedness over the last 2 decades running a camp. Like it's true. Usually I tell myself I can't even think about camp September, October, or November. that's that's for my mental health. But like if it's harming operations, I'm just using myself as an N of 1. But if it's harming operations, then like you should be working that whole time. We are tired and we are stressed out and we are pulled thin, but there's ample time to answer questions such as how can we use AI to make things different? Is this registration and like payment system the best for us? Like we have time to do that. I don't know. I love data and even though the questions are not great, I keep hearing. Nevertheless, it is a snapshot of something. It's not rando data, And so anyway, I just didn't know if that was on topic. Why are we so tired?
I think something that's really coming into my mind is that so many people get into this work, especially in upper leadership, because of their heart for camp, because of their compassion and their like desire and like mission-driven love for youth development and that kind of thing, and being outside and getting in the kayak and all of that. And thinking about adopting new technologies and all of that, especially if they've got this nostalgic, this was my childhood camp, or I need to create the magic and all of that. It can be hard, not just to be like, this is the way we've always done it, but to see, like you asked earlier, Chris, like, how does that fit in? How does using AI, when there's AI is so loaded? I mean, there's so much positive and negative because AI comes from humans with varying motivations. So if you can say, okay, I'm going to use AI for good, not evil, or whatever. Like if you have like objections or fears about it or whatever, you got to learn how to do it. But I just think that a lot of people don't come into the camp industry with that mindset of structures and business management. They come in with a heart and love for camp, and it's exhausting. So many people seem to hate that part of it. And even though the AI or whatever would make it easier, it's hard initially to figure that out. And we don't have a lot of money to get someone else to come in and clearly explain it to us and help us set it up. And so that it's all, I don't know. That's those are some of the things that I feel.
It's a good postulation, I think, for sure.
I think it's the fear of failing something that was so impactful and meant so much to you. And if we don't just hang in there and dig deep and make it happen, then that could equal failure.
It's interesting.
So the four of us have the perspective of seeing so many different camp directors, and the job is just too complicated these days for you to continue to just get it out. Like you could get it out 10 years ago and get a good break in December and, come back ready to go. But you just can't, like, it's too much. The expectations are too high for us to continue to do it that way. And yes, lots of people get into this because of how camp impacted them. But I have seen incredible caring camp directors leave this industry crying more times than I can count. I remember talking to Chris about this last spring, where I had a week where I had 5 camp people on Zoom calls just break into tears. And I think this is why I'm trying to figure it out. How do we get through to people for whom this is just a deep held passion, and get them to sort of be open to things that'll help them sustain themselves in this job?
There's a lot of opportunity here.
Tons.
Yeah, which is, part as a camp person, I'm like, okay, how do I use this information? And as a consultant, I'm like, how do I use this information?
Yeah.
And I and I haven't arrived there yet, but it's really rich. It really gives me a good think.
Well, in the next 5 minutes or so that we'll spend on this, I would love to hear some solution-based stuff that this kind of brings you to. And I'll start with one of mine. So what's easy to implement that will have the maximum amount of impact? When you're talking about what Kendra said about what happens if I'm not here, like realistically, what happens if I have a death in the family during staff training and I have to leave for 3 days, which happened to us. And that it's just going to happen. You wishing it not to happen is not a plan. So part of it, I think, is culture. Chris and I talk about culture so much on here, and intention. And so what we did, and this was the cultural turning point for our camp, is that we gave staff a decision-making tool that they could make decisions that we would sign on for without having to come to us. So at any point you can make decisions. And we specifically would have exercises to try to break this tool. Like, is there something that that you would answer yes to these 4 questions, and we would still say, no, you should never do that? You never could. So we sort of came up with this. This is Beth Allison genius. But then they knew that they could take on stuff on their own without needing permission of their supervisors. And that having that tool, which was called the 4S test, like we had a song about it. Campers would be able to sing the 4S test song, and it was on posters in every building, and it was just the culture that people were empowered to make decisions on their own, and so it didn't have to all come to us. And that's when things changed for us. So quickly to review, you have to answer yes to all 4 questions in order to do a thing at camp. Is it safe? Does it build self-esteem? Is it good stewardship of the environment? And we call it, are you being a servant to others? These days, I sort of think of it as the platinum rule. Are you doing unto others as they would have done unto themselves? And that's the 4 S's. So that tool changed everything for us. And it became alumni in their 40s could sing that song for you today.
Love that.
What are some other outcomes, ideas, things to go from us thinking this? highlighting struggles of the camp director. What are some solutions that come out of this for you?
I love the takeaway about continuous program improvement, that really did seem to be a gap. And it didn't seem to be that camps didn't know what they needed to improve on, but they weren't tracking it. And so I think that is setting a clear goal to be more strategic about setting those goals, and everybody's going to feel like their setup is a little different, because even I'm like, well, like 90-day goals, it's just them, like it's just one person, or it's everybody, or we're doing school year stuff, not camp stuff, and that doesn't matter at all. Like creating what works for you, of a simple system that is consistent, that you can do year round and track your program quality, your improvements, your goals. That really stuck out as an important takeaway, especially because I don't know a whole lot about AI and how the heck you would use it at camp. So
I think the results around family stuff, in the sense that most people feel like their families are having great experiences, but they don't have strong feedback loops or strong communication with families. And I'm like, how do those two things go together? And the AI stuff and the psychological safety stuff is like, wow. But this part, I'm like, there is a solution here. I'm just trying to figure out what exactly is the problem. How are you able to accomplish that? And how do you improve the feedback loop? I'll tell you right now, I know a lot of camp directors find parents annoying. All right, they do. I've heard a lot of people say it's the worst part of my job is interacting with the parents. And I want to sort of like revisit and reframe that, because I think we're too gentle when people say that around us. We're taking care of other people's children. The relationship with the parents is primary. It's primary. And they have to be giving you information. You're giving their information. You're helping raise their kid. This has made me consider that I think I am too gentle in my response when people say that to me and they are camp directors. This is fully part of your job. It is, some would argue, the job. You're raising people's children. You have to build tools where they can report on their concerns, either with your program or with the child before or after they come back from your program. So that's my takeaway, is to think about our family engagement and ways that can be improved.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for saying that, Chris. I think too, for me, there's a nugget in here. There's a few of them, well, a whole lot of them, but I think just some really great information about, camps are, you look at the big picture, they're getting the importance of, based on what you're saying, Chris, the relationship with the families, the relationship with the work, why we do what we do. And there was a note in there about camp directors and leadership being able to explain the why, right, to their staff of why do we do this? Not just we got to do this, is important, but why. And I think then the gap is using that information in a way that then drives your cycle, your loop of, we've got the why, we know this is important, we're going to get information from families, and then maximize your efforts by turning that into, now what are we going to do with that, and how does that feed into our next year, right? And I loved, Travis, hearing you say small bites, one thing, pick one thing. If there's one gap that you're like, I really don't like that, and that's what we're going to focus on this year, that be 1% better. That is incredible. You don't have to change everything. You don't have to be 1,000% in all your spaces the next day. It's, I think sometimes we're so passionate about the work and we get so caught up in it that we want it to be perfect and amazing. And so it's like, if I'm gonna make it better, I'm gonna make it all better. Well, you do that one bite at a time. I love that phrase, small bites. So I think, to me, that's the big takeaway. Celebrating the wins of, we're doing some great things. We've got credible relationships. We understand our work. We're doing a good job of communicating that, but then taking the next step to use that work in a really efficient way that then drives our next work. So one step is leading right into the next.
That, Kendra, is probably a great place to wrap this up. Well done. Way to put a button on it. So this report will be available when this episode comes out. You'll get a chance to see it and take a look at it and comment to me on that, Travis at GoCamp.pro. What I want to do as we move on here is, well, let's shift to our tool of the week, and then we'll do how to follow up with each one of us after that. So now it's time for our tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
I'm going to go first since I'll just get the ball rolling. Mine's a book by a writer named Pat Flynn, who any longtime CampHacker listeners will know I've recommended Pat Flynn a number of times. It's been quite a while since I recommended him, but he has a book that fits this mentality of finding the small things and developing the skill of small continuous changes. It's called Lean Learning. And you can go to camphacker.tv/podcast to find the link to our show notes. And we'll put the books and other tools that we talk about in there. You can click on there to get to purchase those. Kendra, what's yours?
Great book, by the way. Nice one. So mine is, I'm a big fan of, I love tools. I've learned over the years that I need them. And my favorite are the most simple. And so I'm going to share one that has really benefited me because we're so passionate about our work, and sometimes our decisions are really complicated, or they feel complicated because it's a very emotional space. So I came across a RICE method, not the first aid RICE. It's a different one. So RICE helps you put numbers to the decisions that you're making and then prioritizing them based on your reach, the reach for that, and like how many people are going to be impacted, what's the time frame, your impact, is it quantitative or qualitative, and putting a number to that, confidence in how well you can do that, what's going to take, and then the effort. So spelling out RICE, and then it turns it into a math equation. You can use a calculator, I do, and it actually will put a number to where in your priority list does this decision fall, to help you as a camp director. We decision fatigue all over the place, right? So this is just a really simple system to use. You can look it up. It's easy to find, and build your little math equation, and then help you make those decisions and put them in priority order.
That is great. I love a good tool. So good. Amanda, what's yours?
So what's on my mind right now is conference travel. I know a lot of camp directors are also traveling for conferences. And so my little hint or tool of the week is, if you haven't already downloaded Instacart, you can download Instacart and get your first 3 deliveries for free. So what I'm doing when I'm going to the ACA National Conference next week is I am getting some Walmart breakfasts delivered to the hotel lobby. So when I get there, I'm going to have the stuff for my yogurt parfait, so I don't pay $18 for a yogurt parfait at their little market or whatever that is missing letters in the name. But I love hotel room service stuff, and that is the worst use of money ever invented. So that's my tip.
Well done. The camp directors tend to have lots of email addresses that they use. So if you've used Instacart, you might choose to sign up for a new account with a different email address. Yeah.
Yes.
Chris, what's your tool?
Oh, this book spoke to me. I saw this book in Barnes & Noble. I had to pick it up. It's called Humankind, A Hopeful History by Rutger. Oh, let me make sure I say his name right. His name is, it's a Dutch fellow, Rutger Bregman. I was right. And this has always been fascinating to me. And it's finally, someone just did all the research that I didn't want to do, because this is my belief as well. But what he tracks is that it doesn't matter what religion, it doesn't matter what ethnicity you're from, it doesn't matter when you existed in time. Most of humanity labors under the idea that human beings are ruled by greed, that we are self-interested at all times, and that should the electricity go off, we'd all be breaking windows and stealing things. Our laws are built on that. Religions are built on that. The Catholic religion says you're born with sin. But I didn't do anything. It doesn't matter. You're bad. What Bregman does in this book is that he goes all the way back to when the Homo genus separated into Neanderthals and us and the others. And what he shows is that how Homo sapiens survived to be on podcasts and whatnot is because we're more likely to cooperate than compete. And he goes through all these examples. And the one that I'll talk about really quickly here is that we've all read Lord of the Flies in middle school or high school about some boys from a school that get crashed up on an island, and 3 of them end up dead and they all become whatever. He found a real life story where this really happened in the South Pacific. And I won't, buy the book. You'd be shocked to know that's not at all what happened. So Humankind, A Hopeful History. Check it out.
That is great. Thank you. Well, thank you, all of you. Pardon me. Thank you for being a part of this discussion. If you have questions or comments, you can email me, travis@gocamp.pro. You can open this podcast in your podcast app and look at the notes section or the details section. There's a spot there that you can send us a text message. And we're going to read some text messages next time we get together that folks have sent in. So, Kendra, I want to thank you so much for being here. Tell us again how the name of your company and then how folks can get a hold of you if they want to follow up and or hire you to work at their camp.
Thanks so much, Travis. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yes, so you can find us. We are Innovative Camp Company. We do everything from staff trainings to board development and strategic plans. So we're here to support you and give you more time to do what's important to you by being a partnership and a voice saying what you need to say. So our website is www.innovativecampcompany.com. And we would love to hear from you, connect with you, work with you, partner with you, whatever it is, however we can help. So thanks for the time and thanks for including me in what has been an awesome conversation.
Well, we're grateful you've been here. Thank you. Amanda, how about you?
All right. So my consulting company has a very creative name, Amanda C. Palmer Consulting. I don't know how I came up with it, but it was kind of amazing. No. So my email address is acpalmerconsulting@gmail.com. My website is amandacpalmerconsulting.com. So not too complicated if you can remember my name, but I would love to hear from anybody who's interested in some collaboration or partnership. Thank you so much for letting me be on the podcast.
Well, we're grateful you joined us. Thank you. Chris, how can people get in touch?
You can try a seance. I'm not dead, but I am nosy. So you never know what might happen. If that doesn't work for you, you can email me, planetchris@gmail.com. Check out my website, planetchris.net, or look me up on Instagram to see what I'm up to. That is @planetchris1.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you for being here, Chris. It's nice to get to podcast with you again. It's been a while since we've
It's been a while, too long.
recorded together. I want to say this. It is understandable that you are feeling overwhelmed. It's the time of the year. The job is incredibly hard, and that makes sense. And again, look for the small bites, but hiring somebody to come in from the outside to help you out with these kind of things means that you don't have to just take small bites and wait 90 days to figure out if it works. Like the people on the show today in particular, but we've had lots of consultants on, they can come in and install a system for you that'll just make your life easier because they've developed it over time. And so that is a way. And I said this on a webinar yesterday, the people who do this job in the camp world are properly expensive. They're expensive for good reason, but it will simplify your life to find the money to do that. And I will guarantee you that anybody on the show today can make your life easier and help you make more money and be less tired. I will personally guarantee that. So if that doesn't happen, you do hire them, then come to me. Thank you so much for listening. I want to take 1 second and encourage you to check out the Camp Code podcast. Search for that in your app or talk to your smart speaker about it. This is a show solely about staff training. And it's been fun to hear that Ruby's been back on the show and some other great guests this year. But if you want some inspiration and shortcuts for running your staff training, check out the Camp Code podcast from GoCamp Pro.
And Travis and I want to thank the sponsors of this week's episode, as well as our editor, Ryan Vandetoren, and our GoCamp Pro's executive producer of podcasting, Mr. Matt Wilfred.
Thanks for the evening, friends.
The CampHacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. CampHacker, bringing your world into focus.